Okay, this will be my review of the first book of the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, The Way of Kings. I'm very excited to review this book because it belongs to one of my new favorite fantasy series, the Stormlight Archive. Highly recommend it. I've recently discovered Brandon Sanderson and I've read Elantris, Warbreaker, Mistborn, and I'm currently making my way through the fourth book of the Stormlight Archive, Rhythm of War. While I definitely intend to go back and review those other series, Mistborn in particular, I wanted to start with The Way of Kings. So since this book has been out for a while, I'm not going to worry too much about spoilers, so away. I'm going to take a look at each major story arc and then we'll see what I think. We're going to start with Dalinar. While he's not my absolute favorite character, so not even in this book series, I mean, this book series is full of great characters, but Dalinar, he's up there. He is a very interesting character. Dalinar is the brother to the previous king and is the uncle to the new king. He needs to find a way for his anger to become useful in his determination. His core struggle is how to draw the line between his ideals and how his actions reflect those ideals. He comes to a point where the ideals he has in his mind come face to face with reality. And then, of course, there are some times where he needs to make a decision or he makes a decision that does not align with his ideals. And it changes him, whether it be for better or for worse. Dalinar really strives trying to keep these two sides aligned and always having his ideals, but he's constantly agonizing over who he was in the past. He is haunted by his past actions. It takes him a while to find the middle ground for where he can be somewhat comfortable in this balance. He's very compelling when we get to see him hold his ideal, this perfect ideal for himself that he must attain to somewhat make up for the monster he was in the past. He sees these extremes, this extreme good or this extreme bad, as the only two paths his life could take. And so he pushes very hard towards this good ideal. He's on this path. He wants to stay on it, but everything is just trying to pull him off of it, whether it be his past, the other people, his scenarios. He's trying to stay on this path of good. How he sees the world changes, and how he acts in the world shifts as he juggles this balance. And somehow he finds a way to maintain his strength. He's willing to do the work. He's willing to kick some ass, but in a way that he remains honorable. Honor is his core foundation. And so everybody just needs to deal with whatever he's doing. He's not trying to people please, which is very enjoyable. He's not just a pushover. Despite him no longer wanting to be this warlord soldier type, he's moving on from that. But that doesn't mean that he has no potency in his actions. He's just shifting, and he's learning to make that shift in his mind from physically being the most dominating soldier on the battlefield to becoming a force in his own right otherwise, from his actions and his words and his decisions. I really enjoy that he hasn't turned pacifist, but he's no longer this warmongering, unhinged soldier. He strives to be capable to do the right thing. In terms of who Dalinar is, he's probably the most interesting character to watch as he progresses through this book and through all the future books. He's such a different take. Like, you're not going to easily find another character like Dalinar. Like, even the other main protagonists, I'm sure nobody's really coming close, but you could find equivalents. But Dalinar, he's one in his own. I really enjoyed his story through the first book, and how he manages his relationships with those around him feels cohesive with who he is as a character. How he deals with the people around him also makes a lot of sense when you start unpacking how magic relates to him as a character, and not just him in the world, but how he comes to be. And I'm trying not to be too spoilery, you'll see. Here again, with his relationships, he is haunted by his actions in the past. He strives to be better, and his relationships reflect that. In the way that in the way that he tries to reconnect with his children, it really feels like he tries very hard to be a better man than he was the day before. It will be exciting to discuss how he develops as a character later in the books, and especially with how this first book ends with a big betrayal for him. Watching how he's going to cope with that in the next book. I'm excited to delve into that. Then moving on to our next big main character in this book is Shallan. So she is a noble woman who's just arrived in this new coastal city with a plan to save her family's fortune and reputation. How she's going to go about that is not the most honest way of going about it, and that in itself you can already sort of see the kind of character that she is, but we really don't know who she is. Like, she is very compelling as a character, and she comes with a lot of unanswered questions from the get-go. And as we watch her win her way into the tutelage of a famous scholar, Jasna Colin, we find Shallan in her attempts to begin to create this subterfuge. The main component of Shallan is her constant shifts in who she is, and this becomes only more prevalent later in the books. Her personality, whoever she's trying to be in any given moment, is shifts. She's never the same person, and she's very actively performative in who she needs to be in each scenario, or at least how she believes she needs to be. This aspect of her grows only even further as she discovers her powers. But I enjoy that she isn't, nobody really in these books is really labeled solidly like good or bad. She has faults, many of them, but she always seems to tend towards the better, so far at least in the first book. I mean, she has her own reasons. She's not doing the best things, but ultimately her goal seems worthy, and that being the goal of restoring her family. Until, that is all well and good, until we find out that she killed her own father, and that is a big surprise. It definitely lays the foundation that not all is right with this girl. Like, she's got something going on. We don't know what it is, but we know we can't entirely trust her or her intentions. This is especially true since at this time in the book, we don't know very much about her family, very much about her history, how her family dynamic used to work. So this does not bode well for any future secrets that she may be hiding, whether that be from us, from herself, from the people around her. But she's got some secrets. Most of them likely are not good. But she is very well written as a character. I really enjoy that. No matter if you regard her as a likable character, I don't think that's terribly important, but she's very enjoyable to read. And she certainly doesn't have the stink of a Mary Sue about her, which is, I mean, not that I would ever put that in Brandon Sanderson, but there are some heroines out there. They don't do no good. This lady, she interesting. The book ends with her having burnt most of her bridges, and she's at a very low point. The potential for her character to grow is pretty exponential from this position, and I'm very excited to discuss her in the next book. Alrighty, so moving on to the next main character, main story arc is that of Kaladin. So, Kaladin. Where to start with Kaladin? For one, I'll get off my chest, he has definitely become one of my most beloved characters. When we get to meet him, we know that he is the son of a surgeon who has ended up branded as a slave. Kaladin got to that point by following his younger brother into the army, much to his father's disdain. Kaladin's brother dies soon after. Kaladin disobeys orders when trying to protect his brother and his men, and ends up being branded as a slave and sent to do the worst job possible, bridge duty. Now, in this world, there is a large area known as the Shattered Plains. This is where there are chasms that snake through the landscape, meaning the only way to cross many of these divides is with a bridge. And so that's where Kaladin and his new crew, Bridge 4, come in. It's a bridge crew's job to carry their bridge wherever the army needs it to be. A bridge crew's job is the most perilous. And this is because they have to, one, carry these very big, very heavy bridges across the plains. These are hot desert plains with very little equipment, and they are also the most targeted by the enemy soldiers. They know, the Parshendi soldiers, the enemy, know if they take out the bridge crew, the enemy army can't cross onto their plateau. From his highs to his lows, Kaladin really mirrors my own heart. His arc is very intense, very action-filled. It's a bit nail-biting, his journey, and his story of keeping himself and as many of those around him alive, no matter what, is central to who he is and what he will become. He is just such a likable character. His arc is already so intense, and you see him through so many wins, but even more defeats. So you really get to know him. But at the same time, he is so flawed. He says the wrong things. He's short-sighted in his plans. He's bullish. He has a tendency to spiral into despair when things go wrong. But in a way, it feels like he has every right to do so in those situations. He's in some terrible situations. But then to see how he overcomes them, how he wins his internal struggles, and will still somehow make the honorable choice. You can't help but want the best for him. Even if you're one of those people who feels he's a bit too whiny or depressive, this is a character who does not have a lot of love for himself, which is one of his greatest flaws. But he has got so much love for those around him. He will find a way to still blame himself for the suffering of others, even if he's had no hand in it whatsoever. He's got that surgeon's training in his mind from his father when he was growing up to help those around you, to do no harm. And he's at constant odds with that idea that he feels he's disappointed his father, but he's got this, he's on this journey, he can't go home, and he's doing his best. He is trying to keep his crew alive, constantly at odds with himself and his surroundings, but he learns to adapt, he grows stronger, but damn can he make some bad decisions. Kaladin creates space for those around him to flourish, and we can see this with how Bridge 4 changes throughout the book. From being the most hopeless group of sods destined for death, they are, of all the bridge crews, they are the worst off, they have the worst luck, and they're always getting the bottom of the barrel people. Kaladin managed to transform them into a slightly more hopeful group of sods that might actually have a chance of living through the day. The magic system in the world is fascinating. It's just one of those things that Brandon Sanderson can do so well, and he's so great with magic systems. It's also very interesting how he's always integrating the magic and the religion, belief systems of the people in the world and how they shape one another. It's very well done. I'm on the 4th book, Rhythm of War, and these layers for the magic system, they're still peeling back. It goes deep. So if you really like a good hard magic system with defined rules, I highly recommend these books. I highly recommend pretty much any of Brandon Sanderson's books if that's what you're in for. But don't worry, for those who don't really care too much about how the magic works, but just that it does and that it can do cool things, and that too, you care more about the cool stuff that it can do. This book is action-packed with some really fun takes on how magic can work in this sort of semi-realistic setting in the world. As it has been said so far, we are still only on the 1st book, it's very compelling. The constant storms, the extreme terrain, these chasms with the plateaus, and these cities adapted for their environment, it's all there. You really feel like you're there. You feel the heat of the plains. You feel the sweat as you're with Kaladin running these bridges. You feel this uncertainty with Shallan. You feel this constant internal conflict with Dalinar. You really feel like you're in there, and the world is the same. It really feels very cohesive. It feels right, and I love it. I'm very intrigued to see what more is going to be revealed in this world. And this little section of the Cosmere, I mean, I've hardly explored any of the broader Cosmere related things. I've been wanting to get through most of the books available before I started looking deeper into the Cosmere, and oh man, that's going to be exciting. The book can get quite dark at times, but the light, it really does shine through, and that's one of those things that Brandon Sanderson is also really good at. He's really good at revealing his really dark sides to people in these situations and this magic, and there's so much grossness and ugliness in this world, and yet there's always going to be somebody who can make the honorable choice, who can make the better choice, someone who's striving to make things better, whether it just be for the people around them or for the whole world. There is always going to be something that shines through. So this has just been a very brief review of the main 3 character arcs in this book. There are so many more characters and events that I've come nowhere near to mentioning. So if I haven't spoiled the book too badly, then I highly recommend giving it a try. As I said earlier, I've really enjoyed this book and this series so far. This has been a wonderful book. I rate it very high, like 9 out of 10. Like 10 out of 10 would be like seeing if Patrick Rothfuss can pull off book 3 like properly in something that makes sense, but that's a story for another day. So I can't wait to go and review the 2nd book. I'm going to go do that as soon as I can. I can't wait. I'm very excited. I'll talk to you guys soon. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see my review of the sequel book, or if you'd just like to see more of me in general. And I'll see you around. Have a good day.